is, folks, the first Super Tournament of the year, 2015, the 77th Tata Steel Chess Tournament. Great action, great tournament, great world-class players. Don't miss any of the action. And here are the participants for the Tata Steel 2015. This is the Masters section. Hell of a lineup here, folks. Magnus Carlsen, current world champion, #1 rated in the world. Fabiano Caruana, Italian-American, playing for Italy, #2 in the world. Levin Arodian, great player, #6 in the world. Anish Giri from the Netherlands. You'll see a lot of Netherlands players in this tournament because they're playing in the Netherlands. Wesley So just switched from the Philippines to USA. I saw Wesley at Millionaire Chess in Las Vegas in October, #10 in the world. Maxime Vacher-Lagraf from France, #13. And I'm sure I'll butcher this name. Jobava-Rd.1, #50 in the world, from Poland. Timur Rajabov. I like Timur a lot. He's had a hard time the last year and a half, but he's still #20 in the world. Marine Ding from China. Jobava from Georgia. Exciting player. Look for crazy games with Jobava. And one of my personal favorites of all time, Vasily Ivanchuk from Ukraine. I'll tell you the truth, I like Vasily a lot. He's a really interesting guy. Hao Yifan from China, current women's world champion. Luke Van Wheelie from the Netherlands. I met Luke once and got his autograph in 2010 in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania at the World Open. He's a pretty cool guy. And Ivan Saric from Croatia to round out the field. Average rating 2746, category 20. This is a hell of a tournament, folks. I'll tell you, someday I'm going to put this on my bucket list. I live in the eastern United States in upstate New York, and I would love to go just once before I leave this world to go see that tournament. It's a really cool city. It's a really cool place. I'll just have to see someday I'll be able to make it. Anyway, stay tuned for all the action and all the great games. Well, here we are, folks. Another game from round one of one of my favorite tournaments. 77th edition of the Tata Steel Chess Masters. This is the Masters section, of course, with one of the most fascinating players, of all time. Vasily Ivanchuk is white, and Jobava from Georgia as black. Vasily's from Ukraine, for the non-chess players that don't know that. I think Vasily's one of the coolest guys. He is a really interesting character. I might add that he has a short post-mortem with a Yasser Serouan on the end of this video that you'll find interesting as well. What he's thinking, and he thinks quick. Vasily's getting older, but he's still sharper than hell. Anyway, let's get to it. Ivanchuk is white. Jobava is black. It's going to be a Sicilian. Let's just go through the opening here a little bit. E5, knight, D6, C4, G6, bishop, bishop E6. It's kind of a weird setup. I'm not familiar with this setup for white. The knight on B1 goes to C3, which causes the other knight to go here. Now, I'm not real keen on that, and I know this is all theory, and these guys are 10 times better players than I am, but I just don't care for those two knights there. Eventually, the knight can go to C2, and, can get back into play, but... And as you can see with all the maneuvering of the pawns and the knights, they're a little bit behind in development, but they both are, so... And the computer off screen bears that out. It's a minute advantage for white. Knight to F6. Get the bishop developed, ready to castle. Bishop. Knight comes back to C2. Needs to guard some key squares. That's a good spot for that knight. Rook C8. Now this is interesting. Yasser Serouan had mentioned about the rook move here. F3, castles, and queen of D3 are the top 3 moves. Vasily decides to go rook to C1. The computer didn't like that very much. It's not a blunder by any means, but it considers it a small inaccuracy. Black castles, white castles, knight to E7. I'm not so sure on that. The computer calls for that move, but I'm not sure why. The knight really can't go anywhere. He can't push. The knight can't go here. Yeah, he's coming down this pawn, this bishop and this rook. Computer likes knight to b4, which is interesting. But Vasily takes the second best move, which is tiny difference between first and second, knight to a3. That knight's back on a3 again. I'm not so keen on that. Knight to c6. Computer shows the game is even. Rook d1. Eventually, you're going to want to guard this pawn. Knight to d4. Computer likes queen to d2. Rook to b1, queen to d3 with a small advantage for black. Vasily decides to reinforce that pawn again, which I don't understand. I can understand reinforcing the pawn, but I don't understand moving the rook to e1. That bishop on e2 is very well guarded, but we'll see how it works out for him. Queen to b6. Rook to b1. Black got an awful lot of space all of a sudden. I mean, he's got good center control. White looks a little pinned back. Knight takes. Rook takes e2. The computer liked rook f to e8 instead a lot. But after rook takes, queen to b4, rook to d2. Now that rook kind of went a lot of places. He went here to here to here. Rook comes over. c5. Threatening, of course. We all can see why pawn can't take. Rook takes check. And black loses a rook. Queen to a5. Now, interesting might have been, the computer thought it was worth considering, rook to d3. And after bishop takes, knight takes, queen takes, rook takes. Interesting. Very interesting, to be sure. Tiny advantage for white, but we'll go back. Queen a5. Not as good as rook takes. Because after rook takes, rook over, knight to c2, and white's got a pretty good advantage. Now you'd have to expect, with Jobava playing, he's a very, very interesting player. You see some crazy stuff with him. He's not afraid to take chances. He's not afraid to push the envelope. He might be a little crazier version of Nakamura. Rook takes. Bishop. Rook takes. Rook takes. So I used to go queen to e2. Computer like queen to e1. But if Vasily decided to go queen to e2, if he went queen to e1 after bishop takes, knight c2, bishop takes check, and then knight takes. Interesting. Bishop takes, knight c2 anyway, bishop d4. That was got about a 2/3 of a pawn advantage for black here, but I mean, these two crazy, when I say crazy players, I mean that in a good way. Both of these guys, all hell can break loose at any moment. Queen e1. I'll give you an idea. If knight had taken d4, after e takes, e5, knight, it's clearly over. You're going to lose a piece. After queen e1, bishop goes, pawn to b5. And it looks like he's going to start harassing those knights, getting his pawns down. Knight takes, pawn takes, bishop g5. It's different this time because now the knight is hanging. D takes, queen takes. No, that knight is still hanging there. Queen takes, pawn takes, bishop takes, bishop takes. He decides to move the rook, and he hits the rook again. Rook e6. He decides to go rook a1. Now, it shows a tiny advantage for black, but I'll tell you the truth. I like white's chances here. Rook takes, rook takes, rook e6. Now, here's one of the ironies in chess. Rook pawn endings are notorious for being incredibly complicated. The less amount of pieces there are on the board, the harder it is to play. So it's one of those weird, ironic twists in chess, and you have to be accurate in rook and pawn endings. Shows a tiny advantage for black. We'll call it even. King to f2. He starts to get the king in. King f8. Usual stuff. King. Decides to go g4 now, which I thought was interesting. King to d7. He's trying to get his king over to where he's got an advantage. 2 pawns against 1. f4. Rook c6. He's going after the pawn. King just comes up. Now, it looks like Vasily's king's getting very active. White's king is, and we all know in endgames, the king's a very powerful piece. It's worth almost as much as a rook. King c7, f5. And this is where I think Jobava kind of loses his way. King to d5. It's still an even game, but he's giving Vasily a chance here, I think, to win this. King to b6. Guarding that pawn. Rook a3 guards his pawn. a5. e5. Looks like he's going to get a passed pawn. Rook to a4. Not as good as rook takes. Then after f6, king c7, rook takes. And White's got winning chances, I think. After rook to a4, the rook takes a4, and that's where Jobava throws in the towel. Give you an idea, rook takes, bishop takes f6. Now, Yasser Seirawan was having trouble why Jobava resigned so quickly, and you'll see in the post-mortem interview at the end of this video, you'll see why. And Yasser was a little... I think he wasn't embarrassed. He was a little embarrassed that a grandmaster of his caliber wouldn't see why he resigned. Now, if you want to stop the video now and see why black resigned instead of playing it out, feel free. I was thinking just like Yasser, but you'll see in the interview at the end of the video the reason why Jobava resigned at this point. Well, there we go, folks. Another game from round 1 in one of my favorite tournaments, Tata Steel Chess 2015. I hope you enjoyed it. And I want you to all remember, as I always say, if you think chess is just a game, you're not playing it right. Take care, folks.